Why doesn't the Leaning Tower of Pisa collapse? Despite leaning, the Leaning Tower of Pisa is considered one of Italy's most iconic structures. However, it is not the only tilted building in the world. From the dancing houses in the Netherlands to the Tiger Hill Pagoda in China, there are many famous leaning structures across the globe. So why do these buildings lean, and why doesn't leaning necessarily mean they are going to collapse? Why do some buildings lean? According to Associate Professor Mandy Korff, who works in the field of geotechnical engineering at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, there are several different reasons why structures may lean to one side. In some cases, such as the famous dancing houses in the Netherlands, the reason lies in the foundation system used. Korff says, most houses in Amsterdam's city centre were built on wooden piles. She explains that these piles were placed in pairs beneath the walls and facades of the buildings. The piles extend approximately 12 meters below the soft soil made up of clay, peat or sand. As long as the piles remain intact, nothing happens to the houses, she says. However, if these piles begin to rot or deteriorate over time, cracks can form. According to the researcher, uneven wear or weight distribution can also cause buildings to lean over time. The Pisa example. Ground conditions can also cause structures to lean sideways. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is an example of this. Nunziante Squeglia, professor of soil mechanics and foundation systems at the University of Pisa, is one of the members of the team monitoring the tower's tilt. Speaking to the BBC radio program Witness History, Squeglia said, "The tower began leaning from the very start of construction because the ground was excessively soft. It sank approximately 3 to 4 meters. Some structures lean because of changing ground conditions caused by human intervention. The Tower of Oudekerk, or the Old Church in Delft, Netherlands, is given as an example." Korff says, although it is not as famous as the Leaning Tower of Pisa, it leans in a similar way. She explains, it leans toward the canal because some of the soil was excavated when the canal was dug. One side became softer. As soon as the pressure keeping the structure upright decreased, the building started leaning immediately after construction. Changes in groundwater levels can also cause buildings to lean. Korff says that in some cases, structures are intentionally built at an angle. Many houses in Amsterdam were deliberately constructed leaning forward because merchant houses used to be built that way, she says. Explaining that many of these houses were used as warehouses along the canals, Korff notes that the buildings were intentionally tilted forward to make it easier to move goods into them. So their forward tilt does not mean there is a problem. But if they lean sideways, you can understand that it was not intentional. So why aren't we more worried when there are so many leaning structures? According to Korff, the fact that a building is leaning does not mean it is structurally unsafe. A structure has to lean quite a lot before it truly becomes unstable, she says. However, in some cases, the tilt does need to be corrected. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is one of them. Although the tower had been leaning since the beginning of construction, measurements made during the 20th century showed that the tilt was gradually increasing. Squeglia says the situation was quite alarming. The collapse of the Civic Tower in Pavia, Italy, in 1989 became a turning point. According to Squeglia, the incident was the trigger, and the Leaning Tower of Pisa was closed to visitors a year later. Many ideas were proposed to make the tower safe by slightly straightening it. Squeglia says the chosen method was soil extraction. He explains, without touching the tower itself, 37 cubic meters of soil were removed from the northern side of the foundation. The tower reopened 11 years later. However, according to Korff, this method is not an ordinary solution. This was a very special situation unique to Pisa. Under normal conditions, such a method would not be used, she says. In structures built on wooden piles, such as the houses in Amsterdam, replacing the foundations can prevent the tilt from increasing further. However, this method requires completely removing the ground floor. Korff also says that sometimes a building can be corrected by lifting it with jacks, similar to how a car is raised. But she notes that this can sometimes cause more harm than good. If a structure is already heavily tilted, making it completely straight can also be dangerous because the building has adapted to its tilted position over time, she says. At the very least, you must be extremely careful not to make the situation worse. According to Korff, engineers today have the technology to do almost anything with buildings. Every kind of solution is possible, she says, but these are extremely expensive and complex operations. The impact of climate change. According to Korff's research, approximately 75,000 houses built on wooden piles in the Netherlands alone are at risk of damage. The number of structures with shallow foundations that are also at risk is estimated to be about 3 times higher. Moreover, there are concerns that these problems may worsen in the future. Korff says, due to climate change and changes in groundwater levels, we sometimes see faster deterioration. When groundwater levels drop, wooden piles are exposed to air, which accelerates rotting. Changes in groundwater can also affect soil layers, creating new problems for buildings with different foundation systems. However, Korff emphasizes that this is a slow-moving process. As for the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the 11-year restoration project completed in 2001 reduced the tower's tilt by more than 40 centimeters. Engineers believe the tower will remain safe for at least another 200 years.